Sal Capaccio joins us on the Western Hotline as we gear up for Bills and Falcons tonight, and also, just generally talk about what happened in the league yesterday. The Chiefs over the Lions on Sunday Night Football. They have even their record at 3-3, and things soften up for them a bit here before they come to Buffalo to play the Bills. Sal joining us. Good morning, Sal. How'd you enjoy yesterday's football, and is there anything that jumped out at you?
I did enjoy it, but to be honest with you, the first window, 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock, was pretty much a plane ride. But I was able to watch a bunch of it through Red Zone. But that's cool. I usually do that anyway. So I was kind of trying to pay attention as much as I could that way, and then got in, watched the later games. I think the early games I had said on the radio earlier this week on WGR, I had said I was predicting the Saints to beat the Patriots, and for a little while, I'm like, yeah, this isn't happening. And I'm like, wait a minute, it could happen. And then it ultimately didn't happen. But they put up a fight. But here are the Patriots. Patriots now only a half game out from the Bills. I mean, if the Bills happen to lose tonight, Patriots take over first place in the AFC East. The rest of it, look, I mean, what's happening in Miami, what's going on with the Jets, the two teams in the AFC East outside of the Bills and Patriots, just disastrous right now. You guys, I'm sure, have heard Tua's comments. And what he said about player-only meetings, people not showing up, people showing up late. We don't know what's mandatory, what's not mandatory. Starts with leadership. I guess to me, that's a great example of that's why culture matters. That's a terrible culture of not having accountability, right? Doesn't mean you're going to win every game if you go to every meeting and you're on time. But I mean, there's just a disaster right now.
The stranger is maybe the weirder thing about it, Sal, is how Mike McDaniel was asked about it. He's like, the players are doing everything I ask, and here's Tua calling out teammates for not going to player-driven meetings.
That's what I wanted. I'm not McDaniel. There's enough to criticize him for, but wasn't that yesterday more about a critical of, hey, your players don't respect the player leadership in that locker room.
However it is, that's the very unique thing about it, I think, is that McDaniel's they're doing everything I ask them to, but if Tua's asking for more, they're saying no to him or they're late to his meetings. Yeah, that's such an odd situation.
Well, the finger-pointing game is beyond there, I think,
Sure.
Yeah.
For sure, and it feels like that maybe I don't know who the leader is there and who's supposed to be the leader, right? Maybe that's what it comes down to too, and maybe that's happening. But otherwise, yeah. And then last night, obviously, watching the Chiefs-Lions game, just a bit frustrating there when, in some ways, that first drive for the Lions and the touchdown that wasn't the touchdown, all that went down was kind of crazy. So yeah.
Yeah, if you missed the first Lions touchdown that wasn't, on 4th and goal from the 1, they ran a Jared Goff under center, motion out, throw to Goff from David Montgomery. He bobbled it, caught it, and got in the end zone, and the officials talked about it for 5 minutes and decided it was a legal procedure. So 5-yard penalty. And then while the Lions argued about it for 5 minutes, they got to delay a game, backed them up to the 11, so they kicked a field goal. But
I watched
the whole thing was weird.
Did they ever really say why?
Yes.
I had the sound down when that happened.
Terry McAuley said, if you're the quarterback that lines up under center and you back away and you're going to go in motion, you have to pause. Right, Sal? Is that basically how this works? There needs to be
a reset.
Yeah, you have to reset. When you motion out, you have to stop. You can't just motion from under center, which is what they did with Goff. So anyway.
So Goff says, and I have to go back, I believe I read Goff, and I have to go back and say this is what he said, that he never put his hands under. He said because he didn't put his hands under, he didn't think he was considered the quarterback, if that makes sense, even though he was lined up where the quarterback would line up.
Okay.
But even that is, I'm watching it now, he put one hand under, for a second. So
there you go.
But this is... you get some downs. There's a consequence to doing a lot of this, right? With the Lions, it's fun and it often works.
You're gonna get caught sometimes.
Yeah, because remember the Cowboys Lions primetime game a couple years ago? Did he report eligible? Did he not report eligible with a lineman? When you do this a lot, once in a while, you're gonna get penalties like this because you're dealing with certain rules that not every other team is often testing. So, I guess
his quote was, "That's a new version of that rule that I have never heard of." That's what Jared Goff said.
Right. All right. 803-0550. Sal. All right, Sal, so we had some roster moves. We'll get to, the Bills and the Falcons, and we'll get a couple calls in for you here, too. We have people waiting to talk to you. So T.J. Sanders and DeMar Hamlin to the IR. This is, the Hamlin news. How surprising is that? The Sanders news, roster juggling here. They've got a bye week coming up. So break it all down for us, what's happening with the Bills defense and these moves.
Let's start with T.J. Sanders. I was not that surprised. Last week, I said I think that if T.J. Sanders is still hurt, you could wind up seeing him on IR because the Bills are getting Larry Ogunjobi back, and that would be a smooth transition. Hey, if the kid can't play right now and we have to find a roster spot, that would be something you could look at. Unfortunately for him, that's the case, that he's still injured. But when he injured his knee and then he didn't play and then he still didn't show up to practice, he didn't practice, I should say, with an injured knee, that to me told me, okay, well, they could wind up doing this. So Larry Ogunjobi's going to come back after this game. T.J. Sanders goes to IR. DeMar must have got hurt during practice. We were out there last week. He practiced, and then all of a sudden he was limited with a pectoral, didn't practice, and then Sean McDermott kind of gave a little bit more of a less optimistic tone talking about him, where he kind of talked about Sanders. Sanders, he said, is going to have a procedure of something on his knee, but he didn't rule him out for the rest of the season. He didn't say DeMar's out for the year, but he didn't sound as optimistic about DeMar. When you're dealing with a pectoral injury, that could be pretty tough, obviously, as you guys know. Okay, so DeMar goes on IR. They now have, with Sanders and Hamlin going to IR, you can now just bring Larry Ogunjobi and Michael Hoyt back to the roster. Now, Ogunjobi is a one-for-one defensive tackle. Obviously, Hoyt is not a safety. So let's talk about on the field first of all. You do have Jordan Poyer, who's on the practice squad, to be elevated. I don't think that has to be the play, though, because the Bills guys have had Jordan Hancock inactive pretty much every week. To me, Jordan Hancock just becomes the DeMar Hamlin replacement when it comes time to game day. You don't have to carry an extra safety. They're kind of carrying extra safety a little bit right now. Mm-hmm. They can just kind of go with who they have, and if they need someone to elevate, then you do have Jordan Poyer, and you could also
they have Sam Franklin already on the roster too, right?
They do have Sam Franklin, but Sam Franklin's obviously only special teams, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's not going to do much, but they have Jordan Poyer is the only practice squad safety they have right now, so they could just go with Jordan Hancock. They could and go with 4 safeties anyway. But roster-wise, numbers-wise, you just put Michael Hoyt on. But what's tricky is if you put Hoyt, once Hoyt comes back, you're going to have 6 defensive ends. The only question I have is that what they want, right? Do they want 6 defensive ends? So you could say, but they only have right now, it'll be 4 defensive tackles with Ogunjobi. So it is 10, and a lot of times they carry 10 total defensive linemen. And you don't have to count all the defensive ends as defensive ends because Michael Hoyt can actually play different positions. So I think that's what you do. Like, to me, tomorrow, as of tonight, tonight by 4 o'clock, they have to do elevations, and they've already done the roster maneuvering, but I don't expect them to necessarily sign anybody to the 53. They could. But by tomorrow and this week and into the next game, my guess is you're going to get Ogunjobi, you're going to get Hoyt. They're going to be on the 53-man roster. They're going to roll with 10 total defensive linemen, but 6 are going to be defensive ends, and there's really your swap out.
How do you think it was going for Sanders, Sal? Like, it didn't seem like it started great the first couple of weeks. Did you think it was turning around at all, or was it still pretty inconsistent for him when he was out there?
Inconsistent. I thought it was inconsistent. I think that he's had some ups and downs. There's been a couple of plays you're like, oh, there's T.J. Sanders. There's the power. There's the speed. There's the penetration. I think from a full long game basis, you want to see a little bit more consistency. You want to see a little bit more. We've seen Deion Walker a little bit more like that, right? Walker's been the more consistent player who's at times, I would say it's the other way, where you see things, that's not the greatest thing, but he's actually done a pretty good job, I thought, overall. I do think losing Ed Oliver has hurt all these guys, to be honest with you. Losing Ed Oliver has hurt the entire defensive line, and that means, just from who's got to play in rotation, what their roles are. I mean, last week they elevated Fedarian Mathis and Zion Logue, and these are not penetrators; these are pluggers, right? And that you're not getting much interior pressure. Now, granted, Daquan Jones did that one play on Drake May, and you can get that, but it really kind of just takes away a lot of what you're trying to do on the defensive line, which then has a ripple effect from when you have to bring pressure, where you have to bring pressure from. And I think getting Ed Oliver back will be a big boost. Now, guys, as of right now for tonight, they only have 3 defensive tackles on the roster. Ed Oliver, Daquan Jones, and Deion Walker. They're going to have to elevate someone. Zion Logue is out of elevations. They could sign him to the 53 tonight. They could definitely do that because then they just release him. He goes to waivers, and okay, if they're worried about that, I mean, they could do that, or they could elevate Jordan Phillips or Fedarian Mathis tonight. So I expect one of those moves to happen, either an elevation for Phillips or Mathis, or a Zion Logue signed to the 53-man roster.
Sal Capaccio on the Western Hotline. Barnes Firm Injury Report brought to you by the Barnes Firm Car Crash. For help, call 1-800-8-million. Some of these names on the injury report. Sal, what's the story on Dalton Kincaid?
It's a good question. We don't know yet. We'll find out a little bit later. He did practice all week, which is really good news, obviously, and encouraging news, but it was limited, and it was in a red non-contact jersey. What we got on Saturday from Sean McDermott was him saying he wanted to get a look at Kincaid and Curtis Samuel at practice. So they were both at practice. They were both limited officially, and now they're both questionable. So we don't know. And again, we will not get the inactives tonight until 5:45 p.m.
Okay. All right, so something to keep an eye on. In your experience of guys practicing but in a non-contact jersey, I don't know. Like I'm trying not to ask you to run the numbers on it, but is that, to your memory, usually a guy plays? Like you're just protecting something, but if you're practicing most of the week, like that I would think that's good.
Yes. Generally, I agree with you, Jeremy. I would say in most cases, you're 100% right. Like I would say if a guy has practiced all week in a red non-contact jersey, but especially because he started the week practicing and they didn't hold him back at all, that's very encouraging.
Can I
However,
throw one more thing?
Tell you,
I want to throw one more thing in. I want to throw one guess at maybe where you're going. Sorry to interrupt. Yep. Could it be a let's see how the game goes and there's a bye week coming up?
Yeah, the bye week. I think the problem with see how the game goes is you only get a certain number of guys. Right? Like, I mean, if you say, let's see how the game goes, and then he's not feeling well, and then you are short guys that you have a game plan for, that's tough. But yes, you could do it that way. Yes, I think the bye matters. That's number one. And I think oblique is a bit of a tricky one, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Like obliques have been ones where they've been a little bit more cautious sometimes, I think, if you go back and look historically. But and then there are times where I think earlier this year this happened where Taron Johnson, I think, was in a red non-contact. He didn't play. It was a game. Was it the Jets? Maybe it was the Jets game.
Because he was warming up before the game.
And I thought like he would play. But now let's remember that was a game where, well, it's the Jets offense. You know, are they going to push him back against that particular group? So I think there's a lot of things that go into it here. So we'll see. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see at 5:45 p.m.
One thing about Kincaid, you know, you don't want to see the offense without him. I really wonder what it would look like without him. How they would just kind of, you know, how much would it change the way that they play? Against New England, he's their most reliable target. They like to use the middle of the field. And if it's not Kincaid that's available, I don't know that anybody else just jumps into that spot. Like Dawson Knox is in line way more. Jackson Hawes does not do that. Does that become, you know, more of a receiver game? It would be, if nothing else, it'd be interesting to see how the Bills adjust if they think they're not going to have him.
Yeah, I agree. And the other thing about Kincaid and this injury and him playing or not, you know, last year was a tough year for Dalton Kincaid. We all know that. And he dealt with injuries. And I do wonder if that's part of it. It's like, look, we know like last year he dealt with injuries and it really hurt him and hurt the offense. Let's not go down that road again, right? If there's any question at all, maybe they hold him back. But then if you're going to hold him back, what does it look like? Yeah, I think that, you know, you're losing obviously a threat down the seam who plays tight end. They play a lot of 13 personnel, as you guys know. That would be pretty much out the window. You're not going to do that as much. You could still play 12 with Knox and, you know, Jackson Hawes. I guess by 5:45, if they elevate Kaliki Latu, that will tell us a lot, right? It doesn't mean he's going to be active, but they could elevate Kaliki Latu today, and just say, okay, you know, just in case something happens in pregame warmups or whatever like that, Dalton Kincaid. But they could do something like that. I do wonder if Kincaid is out, does that mean they go back to having all 6 wide receivers available and you're working maybe a little bit more from the slot for both Curtis Samuel, who, okay, by the way, is also possibly not playing. We don't know. And Elijah Moore, you know, so it is interesting. You know, the running backs haven't been as involved, it feels like, in the passing game. I have to look at the numbers. But like Ty Johnson, you know, I think that part of that is because the tight ends like Dalton Kincaid have done a good job on those linebackers and their matchups, especially Dalton Kincaid. So maybe it becomes a game where maybe you use Ty Johnson. Maybe it doesn't have to be a 1-for-1 tight end or a wide receiver.
Yeah, how about Ty Johnson? 1 catch through 5 games.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, last year, what do you have in the Lions game alone? Didn't he have a game with like 8 or 9 catches?
Yeah, 100 plus yards in that game, yeah.
Yeah, and he didn't do that every week. But and then, Sal, on the other side, Atlanta, one thing that hasn't been brought up a lot leading up to this game is they're coming off a bye week heading into this game. So they're not totally healthy either. Like, they're missing Darnell Mooney. They're missing a couple other depth players. But here are the Bills with a couple of banged-up pieces. And I've treated this game like a game the Bills should win. Like, Atlanta is not a consistent team, and just feel like the Bills would bounce back after a loss. But that would be a factor too in most cases. Is that the team you're playing has had more than a week to prepare for you.
100%, absolutely. I think teams coming off bye are tough. I mean, they've had 2 weeks to prepare. Do you think they don't want to go out there and beat the league MVP and the Buffalo Bills? Of course, they're going to have stuff dialed up. They're going to have 2 weeks to get in the lab, figure out ways to do that. They're coming off a big win, by the way. They have played very well at home. Penix has been very good at home, not very good on the road. Like, he's been at home, he's thrown for like 300 yards. I think 3 touchdowns, 1 interceptions on the road, no touchdowns, 2 picks. Yep. This is a home game, although there'll be a lot of Bills fans there, obviously.
Yep.
This is a home game for them. They know Bijan Robinson, he's having a great year. He's 4th in the NFL in yards from scrimmage. He said Bijan Robinson has had 2 100-yard receiving games as a running back. The Bills have not had one at all from anybody from their receivers. I think Dalton Kincaid had one, but a tight end, but they haven't had one from their receivers yet. That's how good he is, as you guys know. They're going to be ready. Big thing about them, I was looking at some numbers. I don't know if you guys realize, they blitz at a very high rate. Like, they get after the quarterback. They bring pressure. They blitz. They blitz over 43% of dropbacks, which is pretty insane. And they are I think they're top 8 in both interception rate and sack rate per dropback. That the Bills have a good offensive line, but they're going to have to be ready for a lot of things. And when you give a team who loves to blitz 2 weeks to prepare, there's going to be some stuff they're going to dial up, and the Bills are going to have to be on the lookout for that. So I think both teams go into this game, honestly, I think both teams go into this game wanting to run the ball. They're going to want to run it, the Falcons against the Bills, because of their numbers, because of Bijan, how good he is, and Michael Penix, he's a young quarterback, right? I mean, Sean McDermott, his defensive staff, they've traditionally done pretty well against young quarterbacks, and they're going to have to, they're going to have something, they're going to want to have some stuff dialed up too to confuse him. But I think the Bills want to run the ball, guys. James Cook, against a blitz, if you can get guys flying upfield, that can create some running lanes and some seams, and I think the Bills feel that they could probably take advantage of that.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see how they want to defend Bijan, Sal, how they'll want to line up. Because when they play Baltimore and it's Derrick Henry, we've seen it a couple times where, all right, you go more base, 3 linebackers because it's a power run defense, and you're not really ever worrying about Henry out of the backfield as a receiver. In this game, I don't know that you just want to line up 3 linebackers all day because, one, you are missing Matt Milano, and 2, Bijan leads them in receiving. If I'm Atlanta, I'd say, all right, you think that your linebackers can cover him in space? So it might be tricky how the Bills want to play that.
The other part about that is Bijan plays all downs, right? If you want obvious passing situations, are you going to get out of that because you're an obvious passing situation down in distance? And then, would they try to use that? He stays in, he blocks, he does a lot. He's a heck of a player.
Yeah, and I'll add to that. You guys are 100% right. You also then are putting a linebacker on Kyle Pitts, and that linebacker would either be Dorian Williams or Shaq Thompson. Whether it's Bijan or Kyle Pitts, they're probably going to have to cover one of them.
Yeah.
Right? So it's tough. I agree with you how you're going to want to play. My sense is that they'll still play more nickel. They have been playing more base, but because of what we just said, unless they come in with an extra tight end and a fullback or something like that, then you'll see base. But I would guess that they'd still want to play nickel because they want to be able to have enough
cover those two
defenders on the field to cover those guys.
Mike and Tonawanda quickly before the break. Hey, Mike, good morning.
Hey, good morning, guys. Quick question real quick. So, hypothetically, if they lose to the Chiefs again in the playoffs, now we're talking about NFL history and across all sports. Do we blow it up at that point, or what do we do? Because I'm kind of seeing, because I got us losing to them in a couple of weeks, to be honest with you. But as far as the playoffs, if we go 0-5, then what?
Thanks, Mike. I don't know. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. We will have a game between these two teams, the Bills and the Chiefs, to talk about in a couple of weeks. The trade deadline is 2 days after that.
Yeah, I mean, the Bills aren't blowing up a roster. They just gave Josh Allen a record-setting
they just extended 5 guys. What would they change?
Yeah, they're not. So when he talks about blowing it up, could you see changes? Sure. I mean, people could talk about front office coaching, but I mean, I don't know. Yeah. That's way down the road, man.
Right. 803-0550. All right. Thanks, Sal.
All right, you got it.
Sal Capaccio from Atlanta. He'll be checking in, of course, throughout the day.